Hi, folks. This is Peter Kaminsky with AI 101, part of AI Salon, and today we're going to take a first look at Claude, the beta. I just got an email yesterday that I've got access to the Claude API, which is still in private beta. So I thought we'd play with it. I purposely didn't really look at anything to prep for this. So it's sort of fun to see somebody stumbling through stuff. It's a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit slow, but you can also see, how somebody works through something for the first time. So as you expect, I wonder, so I'm going to share my screen, move my main Zoom thing over here, and then try to find the share button. Okay, so now we're sharing my screen. I love to have my Midjourney stuff up just because it makes me happy to see that there's stuff there that's pretty. Hopefully that's not too distracting. I started peeking around at just a tiny bit at Anthropic's stuff. And first thing I'm going to do is set up to take notes. And usually in meetings, we'll take notes in HackMD. And then more than just me can, more people than just me can do it. I think usually when if I'm exploring something new, it's kind of like opening your lab notebook and starting to take some notes on what you're doing. I think usually I would actually do this in Obsidian rather than uh, HackMD. So this is going to be a little bit weird for me, but whatever. AI 101, Claude API, data 2240224. Okay. So the first thing I would do before so conceptually, we call this a virtual unboxing, and it is in a way. Before I open the box to see what's in the Claude API stuff, I'm going to reflect a little bit on what I want to find, what I want to spend my time on, tools that I might be able to use to dig into it. So let's call that prep. I know that I have a old command line interface to GPT, 3.5, 4. I guess a better way to say this is a command line interface to the OpenAI API. This is something that I wrote with ChatGPT. It's really short. It's a nicely self-contained kind of let's poke at a chatbot. So it may be that we take this and use this as inspiration. It may be that we hack it to see if we can make it talk to OpenAI and Claude. So I guess another thing is we're looking at the Claude API, and we expect it to be to the OpenAI API. I think it's called chat completion. There's a weird historical thing that the API you use to get something like ChatGPT is actually there's two chat things. So I'm not sure if that's right, but and so then we'll compare it. It would be really cool if there was kind of one interface that worked for both APIs. I don't really expect that to be close. I expect them to be close, but not the same. And then I know that there are libraries that will abstract out interfaces to lots of different LLMs and present it with kind of a standard interface. I think it's designed after the OpenAI API because that one's the most popular one. But we won't play around with that today. I guess I should write down other people integrated it with multi LLM So that would be a good kind of thing and arguably I should look at that first, but I don't want, I want to play with it myself before I go look and see how somebody else is playing with it. Okay, so another thing to know is that this is a REST API. I hope it's a REST API. Um, REST stands for, so a good thing to ask ChatGPT is what's a REST API? REST stands for Representational State Transformation, I think. It doesn't mean anything anymore, but the big thing is that, so an API, I wouldn't write this down for myself, but well, let's maybe write it down a little bit. An API is a way for one computer to talk to another computer. And issue commands and requests, maybe requests and commands. In a way, you can think of an API as a GUI, kind of, or a command line interface, even better, but it's for a computer rather than for a person. And then because of that, because computers are dumb, they're not very smart, you have to have a good documentation thing that says, hey, computer, this is what you have to do to talk to me. Um, uh, so, so another thing to know, like if you want to issue requests and commands, there's a standard verbs they're called for that. So there's get and post. I think there's append and delete. These are the commands basically that you use in REST. Almost always use get and post. Get means I want to I want to download something from you. I want to read something. Post means I want to give you something. And then these don't really get used too much. If you're a computer geek, you'll recognize this as, not in the same order, I think, but you'll recognize this as something called CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're talking with a REST API. There are other APIs besides REST kinds of APIs, and we won't talk about that. Okay, so then standard ways for a software developer to test an API to have a simple interface that just tells your computer to talk to the other computer include curl and postman. And now OpenAI's GPTs. Simple ways to talk to an API. So we've got a choice. We've got a choice of working with self or maybe writing something similar to self. ChatGPT is good at that. Or maybe we've used Gemini. Don't know. These are like kind of, these two are by hand kind of ways to talk to an API. So it's good because you have kind of like, you can just do a thing and try it. It's bad because it's not super useful. Like if I use curl to talk to an API, then I kind of have to like do a bunch of, I do a bit of work to do one command, and then I have to do a same bit of work to do another command. So it's not automated. As soon as I can, I want to get into an automation loop where I talk to it and it either works or it doesn't work, and then I improve the way I talk to it. So curl is, you can kind of automate around curl, but you kind of don't. So it'd be better to have a Python script that did the same thing as curl almost. It takes a tiny bit longer to get started with a Python script than curl, but then you pick up real quick because you're automating. Postman is an interesting thing. It was originally designed to be kind of a by hand graphical kind of interface to REST APIs. it's gotten to where it's really fancy, and you can save your requests and build them and stuff like that. So I'm not an expert anymore on the fancy uses of Postman. It's gotten really good, and it's really good for collaboratively working with an API, which happens a lot in software development. So Postman does have that kind of let's automate this thing, but it's a little bit too fancy for me now. Okay, so let's look at the deal here. And so here's my email that I got from Anthropic. So we'll have to create an account. We'll have to make sure that we've got the right email when I create account. And wow, some links to get started. This thing is really I don't know. They're not really they don't care about individual users. They really care about organizations and scaling. So here's a nice offer to pay them money to get going faster, but obviously I don't care about that yet. Um, so let's create an account. I don't think I've done that yet even. This will be conceptually similar to I think that everybody who's playing with AI Gen AI should have a OpenAI account and a GPT-4 API key. Um, I don't know that about Claude yet, but this is a little bit similar to the process of getting an API key from OpenAI. So an API key, by the way, is just it's kind of like the password that your computer can use to talk to their computer. So now we'll get into the account setup stuff. And it sent this number to my email. So now they've confirmed my email. So I'm just Pete. I actually am part of some organizations, but a lot of times I'll set up myself as an individual account kind of, and then if they need an organization name, then my organization is Peter Kaminsky. There you go. I'm really tempted to click education here, but that's probably not right because I'm doing education right now. Let's call it technology. Heck if I know why they're asking this, but let's give it to them. This is kind of my personal homepage right now. And I think so I clicked on the link into my email. So they have a safety valve here. Hey, hey, if you got this in the wrong email, like make sure you switch to the right email before you create your account. Okay, thanks. $5 in free credits. Awesome. I think I have a Cloud account because, well, maybe I don't. I don't know. So this is a little bit less useful than I wish it were, but they've kind of got a general interface here, so I can just start using Cloud. I don't want to do that. I want to figure out how to get an API key. So this one looks good. Let's try that. I have a free plan for evaluation. Nice. I kind of thought this would be a little bit more complicated, but yeah, whatever. So a thing to know about API keys, and you'll run into this not if, when you create an OpenAI account and you're starting to create API keys. So an API key is like a password. And it turns out sometimes you want to generate different API keys for different things that you might use. And the reason to do that, the biggest reason kind of to do that is so that you can delete them. So when you've got an API key, you can plug it into like different interfaces or different programs that need your API key to talk to GPT-4 or Claude in the background. So for instance, some of you have seen that this is Obsidian, a fancy text editor kind of. Some of you have seen that uh, some of you have seen that I've got a plugin installed in Obsidian, which lets me do a completion of some text. So if I were writing an essay about daisies and I got bored after 5 words, I could say, well, I know there's a bot that can do that for me. Let me do that again because error messages are always interesting. Obsidian error messages pop up here in a black box. So I've I, this used to work. So what it's saying is, hey, the model that you're trying to use, 34K, 32K, GPT-4, 32K doesn't exist. Um, let's do a secret check if I can remember. There's a way to show the debug console on Obsidian so that doesn't flash. It shows up, but let's not go there. But anyway, this is a thing where you don't freak out, even though I feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't get my sentence complete. Yeah. When you're using an API, you buy into a little bit more of a little bit more responsibility for things going wrong or things not being set up or things changing. So I think this is a case where I previously had this plugin. Sorry for all this detail here. Kind of sorry, kind of not. This plugin is called Text Generator. Here's the settings for it. Maybe this never did work because there was a call where I was playing around with the settings here. So this is another example of accepting a little bit more responsibility for how things work and when stuff goes wrong and things like that. Now I feel like I'm making this sound scary. It's not, but I guess this list got generated somehow. This one isn't valid anymore, and so all I need to do is pick something else. So we know that these are dates. If I want a GPT-4 and 1106 sounds good. I know it's not March yet or June. So these are like last year, so I don't want these. So let's pick this one. Let's see if this works again real quick. Um, and then we'll stop using this. But anyway, the idea of having an API key to back up a little bit more slowly is to have your computer more or less talk to their computer. And then your computer has to have a reason or a way that you talk to your computer to talk to their computer. And with Claude, what we're thinking about doing is just setting up, so I kind of like do it directly via my computer, but then that's not very useful. What you really want to do is set up your API key so that something else is using, like Obsidian here, the text generator plugin in Obsidian. So let's try this again, and it failed again. Yeah, whatever. Where we were to pop the stack, as programmers call it, I was talking about you want to set up multiple API keys. And the reason you want to do that is because maybe you give your API key to a program and then you find out that that program has some bug that is like continually in the background asking questions all the time. Like you ask one question, but it keeps doing it forever and ever and ever. And it's like, oh my gosh. So the way to fix that is to delete the API key that you gave it. And then you can continue to use, the other programs that you've given an API key to. Because they're not broken, they're not being crazy, they're not wasting your money. Um, so this is an interesting part. This is an interesting place where they don't tell you what you should name your key. This one kind of does, Peter-secret-key. This is a really lousy name, by the way. And so I guess in the continuing evolution of AI 101 and my teaching stuff, I'll have a little how to create your API key. Here's how you name it. Here's why you name it. Here's how you name it. A good name. So the components of the name that you care about is that imagine you have 10 of these and it's 2 years later and you don't know which one to delete anymore because you called this, say I call it, well, secret key one, key two, key three, key four, and then I go back here and I'm like, okay, I really need to delete this Obsidian one because there's a bug, text generator one because there's a bug. Was it 2, 3, 4, whatever? I don't know. So the basic principle here is to call this something useful. So this is a lot better name. Uh, Text generator, Obsidian. And then I really like to put a date. A date is kind of an optional thing, but it's super useful, I think. Because 2 or 3 years later, you come back here, you go, okay, so it's not the Obsidian one I generated in 2022. It must be the Obsidian one that I generated in 2025, something like that. So this is a really good name. You'll notice that I didn't need to name it Peter or Pete's or Peter Kaminsky or anything because I'm probably going to be the only one using this. There is what I would call kind of an advanced thing. It's not uncommon to give somebody else an API key. I won't do that with this Claude one, but if I had a colleague or something like that, um, I would say, I could say something for Susan, and then I'd probably put it the date again, right? Susan's going to use it for something I'm not clear on what, but I'm going to give it to her. If she goes crazy, or if she just decides to stop using it and tells me, I can kind of clean up, I might end up deleting her key. Okay, so now with all those caveats that or thoughts, I'm going to call this AI 101 Claude Quick Peek or something like that. So another thing, so if you think in your mind an API key is like a password, take care of API keys like a password. And unlike a password, there are times you copy the API key in plain text from one place to another place, or you send it to Susan. Maybe you send it to her on email, and you accidentally CC somebody else. You're replying to an email from Susan, and then you send the API key to Susan and Bill, and you go, shoot, that sucks. The other thing, since I'm performing this kind of on the high wire here, it's not, and we're recorded, it's not impossible that I'll end up making a mistake, and you guys will see my API key, and then everybody on the recording forever will see my API key. So API keys are like passwords. If they've gotten exposed in the wrong place, that's another reason you wanted to delete them. Actually, we're going to see. So right here, there you go. So now if you guys were super fast and super clever, you would have copied this with a screen capture thing and pasted it in your Claude thing and run, 5 million tokens through Claude before I've even clicked copy here. I trust that you guys didn't do that because I trust you guys. Some. I'm actually going to just delete this for good practice. So usually what I would do is copy this, paste it into my password keeper probably, and then go on from there. Since I exposed it, we'll do the demonstration of what you do when you've exposed a API key. I'm going to copy this name because it's a good name. I'm going to move this off screen so I can see it and you guys can't. Well, actually, let's so here I can disable or delete. This is not all API keys will let you disable it. Often it's just delete. It's kind of cool to have it disable. Let's try that real quick. and now it says it's disabled, and it's got a control to enable it. This would happen if, you know, if if I had a question, you know, I came in on my dashboard and it said, you know, your Susan key has been used a billion times and it's costing you $100. I instead of, I might go, okay, Susan, we need to chat. I'm going to disable this real quick to stop the bleeding. I'm going to go ask her, what the heck's going on? Do you mind reimbursing me? I don't have to necessarily, if I can disable it, I don't have to regenerate another key for her. So that's a cool feature. But anyway, we want to delete this. We want to create a new key. We want to give it this awesome name. I want to bring it off screen so you guys won't see my secret, top secret password thing. And then I'm going to do something I do sometimes. I'm going to paste it onto a text edit thing. Almost always I paste it. I try to be really good about pasting it into my password keeper rather than somewhere on my screen. Um, uh, um,
Peter, can I just,
yes,
is it okay to speak while we're recording at this
please,
point?
yeah.
So regarding password keepers,
Hmm.
like what does one do? Like I have a Word document that I, modify the password so that only I'll really know what I've done. But what does one do with all these passwords that we have? Do you use a specific key, a specific program, or did you create something?
Um, I use a specific program. Um, Corey, I love you. Thank you for that question.
I
I
love
hope
you
not
back.
everybody. I hope everybody else doesn't mind. Um, uh, uh, This is, some of you have seen this and some of you haven't. This is kind of a pre-release list that I'm making, a curriculum for AI 101. Um, and it was an interesting thing to kind of stumble into the fact that, okay, I want to, hey Pete, let's talk about AI 101. I need to know all the things. And so it's like you need to, use an LLM, you need to use image generator. Like I said, you need to have an OpenAI API key. Um, the interesting thing about this is it turned out there's a bunch of like computer 101 things that I think you want to have before you even start marching into here, right? And the very first one is use a password manager. Um, so right to your point, Corey. Um, and so then you use a personal knowledge manager to keep like notes and stuff. So uh,
Maybe that's a whole other 101 course,
well, in a way
which ones we should
that's,
use, that kind of thing.
yeah. Um, it turns out that it's an interesting topic because there are a whole bunch of them. And one thing you can do, you probably, many of you probably use your built-in browser password keeper, which is fine. Mac and I think Windows have there's a keyring or something it's called. I forget what Apple calls it. There's built-in stuff on your operating system that'll help you. Um, those are fine. I find them not to be useful because I want to have my passwords on all my devices, and I have an Android phone and a Mac computer, and I'm on somebody's Chromebook and I need my passwords. I'm on my aunt's Chromebook and I need my passwords. So typically, what you do is uh, I'm gonna do another minute on this and then we'll stop. Um, the one I use is called 1Password. Another one I trust is called Bitwarden. And another one, there's kind of another one I kind of trust called Dashlane. And then there's something called KeyPass, KeyPass, and different versions of that one. Um, by the way, a trick that used to be the best way to use a search engine, and it's still a good way to use a search engine. If you know a couple names of something like a password manager, then you can find out more right there, right? So anyway, these are the ones I trust, and there's a bunch of other ones, and some of them I don't trust. So talk to somebody that you trust and get them to recommend one. Bitwarden is cool because it's commercial and it's a freemium one. 1Password is, I think, they're about equivalent. 1Password is a tiny bit easier to use. Bitwarden, but it's always pay. Does have a good family plan. Bitwarden is free, and then you can use fancier stuff. KeePass is, and these nowadays password managers use cloud storage, so they make sure to encrypt all your passwords locally, and then they upload the encrypted thing, so you can get it from any computer, kind of like I like. Um, there's a different way to do it. You can have an open source password manager that keeps all of your passwords locally, but then you have to figure out how to make that encrypted file, happen in different places. So there you go. So that's a sneak peek on the whole. Actually, Corey, did that answer your question kind of, or um, I think, let me see. So then there's another weird thing. I have a weird thing where um, I have a weird thing where most password managers have a way to, this is what my password manager looks like. Um, so it's just a database, but especially designed to, I think if I kill this, these are all my accounts and passwords and stuff like that. And there's probably, I don't know, hundreds, probably 1,000, something like that. You'll notice that I can show this to you because 1Password has the passwords blanked out, um, uh, which is nice. Maybe you don't share your screen all the time, but if at least if a coworker walks behind you and it's like, oh, I see what you set there. Um, uh, the other thing that password, I skipped maybe the most important thing about password manager. It lets you set random passwords instead of um, anything that makes um, anything that makes sense to a human. It's better to have a random password. We'll talk about that more later.
Can I ask a quick
Um,
question?
yeah,
So when you have a password manager like that, is it logging into your accounts or is it just saving the
good
passwords?
question. Yeah, that's a good question. And I was trying to get there and I skittered away from it. So thanks for bringing back.
Yeah.
Um, the nice password managers have a plugin for your browser. And you actually you go to a website and a thing pops up and it says, do you want to log into this website? And you click yes. So it actually helps you log in. Um, this one, it actually has, uh, I don't even have to start on the website. I can start on my password manager. Uh, it's got a thing where it says open and fill. So if I just click this box anywhere, it pops open up the Raise website and fills in the stuff and it's logged in for me.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Um, so now the caveat, I do not use the plugins. I cannot bring myself to trust my browser and its interaction with my password manager to be safe forever. Because I know that browsers get hacked. I know they get fixed really quick, but I know they get hacked. And I don't want to be dinking around on the web and have some virus infect my browser and go, ha, I can pretend to be Pete and use his password manager. So I do not use that. I literally, if I'm logging in to someplace, I click this, which copies it to my clipboard, and then I, log in, paste it. It's a pain,
Can I ask one
but
more
whatever.
question? I'm sorry to take up your time with this.
No, not at all.
So if you're saving your passwords to your browser, like right now, I can go to Google Password Manager and
Hmm.
see my passwords.
Yep.
If it gets hacked, then all of them are compromised in that way?
Uh, I think uh, the simple answer is do I want to gamble with it? And my answer, the personal answer I have is no. Um, Google Password Manager, I haven't used it very much, but uh, I'm gonna think that they've protected this 6 ways from Sunday, and I would feel pretty good about leaving my passwords in the Google Password Manager.
Okay.
Um, I and and there's a difference between the Google Password Manager and which is a whole system, and then Chrome. Um, so I guess if I were using Chrome, I would feel like Google uh, has integrated their password manager and Chrome to be like as safe as anything else. So I would trust that actually. If I went over to Firefox and I was using Google Password Manager in the background, which you probably wouldn't do, but maybe you would, I would worry that whoever wrote the plugin for Firefox to talk to the Google Password Manager left a bug that would get exploited. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
good,
thanks.
good question. And I would trust it if it's all integrated, and I wouldn't trust it if it were disintegrated.
Here, monkey.
And if we were using
Um,
Firefox,
yeah.
how would, and if Google Manager was up there because we've saved something and it says, do you want us to save it? And that's, I assume, all that you do when you use Google Manager, right? It just automatically will do that if you say yes, save this to my browser or whatever.
So if you're using it in Firefox, somebody, and maybe it was Mozilla, the people who write Firefox, or maybe it was a open source person or something like that. Somebody has written a little plugin, a program that runs inside Firefox that knows how to talk to Google Password Manager. Um, so because of that chain of who wrote it and who integrates it, it's not the person who wrote the plugin isn't Google. So, if Google changes something a little bit, or if they misread the documentation a little bit, or if they're not as smart as, or if they're not as well funded as Google, and didn't spend enough time making sure there was a lot of security, it's a weak spot in the chain. Google has really strong chains, right? Because it's all one place. And not only is there somebody in charge of the security for each part, there's somebody else who's in charge of security for the whole thing. And there's somebody else in charge of, the security for all of Google, making sure that so that it's a big heavyweight kind of integrated thing. As soon as you break that chain and put it in two different companies or two different organizations, or one of them that's open source, then you've got a lot of weakness there all of a sudden.
I'll send a direct message to you about some other questions about that then, so I won't take up time here, but this is an interesting, oh my, okay.
Let's come back to it we'll have a scheduled session, so people who are wondering about Claude don't have to have a lesson on password managers. Okay, so now I've got an API key hidden on my screen in a text editing thing. And so, by the way, I scheduled 60 minutes, but I soft scheduled 90 minutes with my household. So I'm expecting to be here for another 45 minutes. So I've got an API key. That's awesome. A thing that I know that I can do with API keys, and maybe I want to do that. I'm going to turn up the brightness on my screen just a little bit, which means I get more glare on my glasses, but then I can see better. So, you want to get to the API docs and figure out what you can do with it. So we're in a special case here where I literally want to play with the API itself. I want to play with the API. Normally, when I get an API key, it's because some program I'm using says, if you've got an API key for OpenAI, I can have a whole bunch of features, I can have magical AI powers. So just go get me an API key and give it to me, and then we're good to go, right? So usually when I'm playing with an API key, it's because Obsidian, the plugin, or some other tool has said, unlock superpowers, AI superpowers with an API key. Let me show you maybe another use of an API key just to kind of make that. I think this is not going to work, but we'll see. This didn't work last time we tried it, so I don't think it'll work again. Yeah. So we're in a special case. I'm doing a lot more with the API key than I usually would. Usually it's just copy and paste it. Make sure that, I trust this program, find an API key for it, feed it the API key, and then get going on the thing that I was trying to do. So here we're doing something different. We're trying to play with the API itself. One of the ways to do that, and I can show you a different API. I think this is not off topic because we're learning about APIs here. There's a database, there's a text, there's a thing like Obsidian, except it's different. There's a personal knowledge management system. It uses a graph, it's called. It's very cool. It has a nice display. It has a backend, it has the API. So this is actually a little bit more like, if I just want to get started, this is actually kind of what I want. I just want the gets and the posts. Um, I just want the commands. So this is just the commands. So this is their documentation. It's light on all the words. So sometimes words are nice. Sometimes they kind of get in the way. It's like, guys, I know how to use an API. All I need is the commands. So let me show you something here because we're learning about APIs. So I think this is still on topic. Um, uh, this documents all the all the arguments, it's called, these little things in um, squiggly braces are variables. So if I want to get an attachment from a particular brain and I know the attachment ID, um, I would issue the command get /attachments / and then whatever the ID of the brain is. And I could paste that here if I had one, uh, attachment ID, etc. So check it out. There's this button called try it here. And I wonder if it's gonna, it doesn't give me an error message. uh, it should give me a different error message here because if you think about it, I've gone to this, well, there's a cool thing that people invented, I don't know, a decade ago. They said, hey, I want to document my API for people. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of the screen. I want to document the API for people. I want to give them a list of commands. Wouldn't it be cool is if from this page, they could run that command? But oh my gosh, they would need an API key for that. However would we do that? I know, we'll put a button that says authorize. So not that this is a very friendly way to do this. This should say use an API key here or something like that. I guess up here it says you can try it out. I guess I skipped over the documentation. It is actually documented. Awesome. So I can generate an API key. I can return to this page, click the authorize button, paste a key in here, and then click authorize. It's kind of funny. It let me, I don't think that, well, anyway. So you can click authorize here, and then you can go to any of the documented commands and click the details of it here. I have a heck of a time with this little micro interaction.
Would these different commands, so
Yep,
this is really new to, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. This is all like new, new, new.
yep.
So would all of those commands work for any company that I had to get an API for?
Nope.
Okay, this is specifically Claude right now.
This is specifically, I'm doing a demonstration of a really cool thing that I wish Claude had. It's interactive documentation. Um, I did it super quick. I went over to a completely different company, and maybe that's a good illustration for later. These are the commands that you can do for the brain. So you can, get brains, post to brains, delete brains, all that kind of awesome stuff. Get notes. So we'll see that these commands are completely different from the Claude commands. Um, I was hoping that Claude would have one of these magic web pages where I can just paste an API key in and then say that I'm using the API. Um, and no such luck. Yeah, prompt workbook. I don't think this is going to be, yeah. Thanks, Claude. I didn't really need to go to Sheets. This is where you get to if you, let's see if I've got it. In the documentation, when you say, hey, I want API access to Claude, you get to this page and then you read, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have it yet. Well, accepting applications, fill out this form. So I filled out this form a long time ago, which is why I've got beta access. Okay, so let's keep going. We didn't get the easy things to do here, but let's, I'm going to my email and I'm thinking, I'd feel like Anthropic didn't do me any favors by having such complete documentation because I want to just get to the good stuff. So let's see if this is a good, yeah, this is the same place. Okay, guys. So amazingly enough, a lot of times, maybe not amazingly enough, a lot of times you search for this. I did this last night, Anthropic Claude API. There you go. Okay, now we're talking. How can I access the Claude API? I swear I found this like the first click. Oh, this is that one. Access to Claude. Getting started with Claude API. Okay, so here's the first best thing I've got is somebody else's stuff, which is okay. This is kind of exactly what I didn't want to do. Somebody else has written a Anthropic client for Python, so I could use this, but I don't want to. I want to like get into the guts of it and use it myself. Okay, so here I can start to see this is a command. This is inside a Python program, but this is kind of what I want to be able to do myself by hand-ish. So if I search for that, I'm finally getting to the right place. I think if I didn't have a bunch of people watching me and I was not hyped up already talking about so much stuff, I might have gotten to this page, but I feel also like I could send an email to Anthropic and say, hey guys, it was hard for me when I was doing other stuff to find this page. We jumped, because I did that search, we jumped right into the documentation for a command. And again, by the way, this is not something that most of you need to know. How to use the API is an advanced topic. The fact that you can, I think I would be interested in looking at this a little bit and going, what's possible with the API? Do I need to talk to my developer and have her say, yeah, have her enable some extra functionality, that I read about or something like that? You can see here that this is cool. This is, remember I talked about curl. This is, this is the one step less cool way of presenting some documentation that I can use super fast. So we saw on the Brain API, all I need to do is paste my API key into that web page, and then it's activated, and I can do any of those commands straight from that web page. In this one, this is cool because it tells me how to do it in JavaScript or Python or even just with a shell command. But I have to copy and paste this someplace else. So because I think everybody is waiting for me to actually get to the point where we're using Cloud. Let's go ahead and do this. Because I'm a API, I've done API development as a software developer, because I use the shell for different things, I recognize this as a shell command. I also recognize that it's safe because I know curl. You should have a policy of being a little bit cautious when somebody says copy and paste this into your shell, because you can script your computer that way. But I know this is completely safe. So, oh, back here, this one. So I can copy this, I can paste it. This is not going to work because it's got a variable in it called Anthropic API key. So let me demonstrate that it's not going to work. Curl, let's talk about curl a tiny bit. And remember that you've got a good friend, your chatbot. We won't go through this. It's actually a pretty fancy tool. It can do lots of stuff, but uh, right here is what we're doing. Curl has the ability, it's a simple tool that can pretend to be a program. It doesn't pretend, it actually is. It's a simple program that interacts with other computers over standards, including your friends HTTP and HTTPS. You probably know that in the front of this, there's a thing called HTTPS. HTTPS is a protocol, it's called, that defines certain ways of talking between computers. And then a REST API uses, so a REST API is another kind of protocol. It uses HTTPS protocol to talk to a computer. And then curl is just a simple way to do that by hand, kind of. And you can say, hey, curl, I want to send the post command, and I want to send it to this URL. REST APIs use URLs just like web pages do. Even down to, if you know URLs a little bit, they talk, it's kind of like set up like a directory hierarchy or something like that. So it's very common to have a command be like in the URL like this. Sometimes there's version numbers for APIs, sometimes there's not. Sometimes they do it a different way. So anyway, what this says is, hey curl, send a post command to this URL, this server, and then add these extra fields, some like kind of control stuff, and then more control stuff, the maximum number of tokens to sample, and then the actual prompt. Wow. I don't know why this is the, this is an interesting prompt to give to Claude, but whatever. So I hit return right about here, and then this is curl getting the answer back from Claude, and then Claude said, I need you to set the X API key header. So that's here. You can kind of ignore most of this stuff. For those of you who know or care, I'm going to set that. This means shell variable. So if I set this variable up in another window, and actually let me do that. If I do this, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, a variable is a name for like a number or a piece of text. And we use them all the time with computers. So if I want to set this to, I'll set it to like this. I made a mistake here because I left the $sign in. Okay, so we've set a variable to this. We set a variable with this name. The way that we get the value back is to put a $sign in front of it. So if I say, I think I can say print. My shell is rusty, so somebody's laughing at. This is the main use of variables. You use them all the time. You say, hey, computer, remember this number, remember this string, it's named blah. So the way we say that to computers is the opposite way around. Usually you say, hey, computer, here's a name. this is the number, or this is the characters I want you to remember from that. And the beauty of that is we can do that for a bunch of things, right? And then the computer will remember the computer remember that thing and the other thing, and it can remember millions and billions of things. Super useful. Okay, so now let's try this. What I'm going to do in real life is take this command and run it on this this window. Made the same mistake. Have to take off the $sign. And now if I run this curl command again, it gives me a different error message because this is junk. It wasn't that thing is required anymore because I gave it to it. It's like, yeah, didn't make sense. Thanks for giving me the X API key, but it's invalid. So I'm going to take this thing off screen, do the same thing, but with the real string. So now everybody will, I'm sure you're glad that you're learning how to manage secrets while you're screen sharing. So what I did is I did that same export, key. I set the value of it. And now if I go back to this sample command, paste it here. Now this variable is set in this shell session, and I predict that it's going to work. There you go. So in software development terms, this is both a success and a failure. The success was we successfully logged in with our API key, and we got an answer. So I would declare success on this in some sense. We also found out that I don't have enough credits, which, whatever, that's cool. A thing to notice, note that this is a beta product reserved for commercial use only, includes features such as prepaid billing. So I knew that we were going to run into this. OpenAI did an interesting thing when they first started. It was like, go ahead and use it and we'll bill you later. I actually had friends who had trouble getting billed from OpenAI. They would use the GPT API, and then at some point you needed to have spent $1 worth of credits or something like that to get to the next feature. And he's like, I haven't spent the money. I've wanted to. I've tried to, I want to send them money, but anyway, their billing was all screwed up. They did the ability to do the API before they did the ability to do billing. And now they're finding out that sometimes people rack up a lot of credits. And so OpenAI is doing this too, where you pre-purchase credits. Anthropic was smart enough to set up the billing before they just released it, or maybe not. OpenAI is. I'm sure they lost thousands or tens of thousands, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars the way that they did that. But on the other hand, they're first to markets. There you go. Okay, so now we have to figure out how to make credits. Please navigate to plans and billing. Thanks for not giving me a link here. Let me make sure that. So if I go to, I'm going to do this search thing again because no, websites are hard to use. So presumably at support, I'll remember that we made a. Remember I made an account, and I just saw somewhere in there that it was maybe console. Aha, I was foolish. I didn't click the claim button. I was so excited to get going that I didn't actually read the docs yet again. Okay, so let's try this. Let's claim our credits. verify my phone number. Ah, okay, great, thanks. I don't mind giving out my phone number, so y'all gonna see my phone number. Dun, dun, dun. I think this is a different problem than it looks like. Huh. Okay, what it's saying is sending verification code failed. Please check your phone number and try again. This is because my phone number is actually a Google Voice number. And I have a real phone number, but I have no idea what it is. So let me go to Google Voice and look up my phone number. And I don't really want you to know my real phone number, especially if I don't know it. So
Could that be something on a whole other time that you talk about Google Voice? It's interesting that I don't know
yeah,
anybody
that
who's
would be
Google
great.
Voice
Yeah.
number. Yeah.
It's been quite a trip. I've been a Google Voice user for like, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. It's funny now, I said that I didn't want you to know my phone number. But now I need to copy and paste it. Okay, so now it sent me a confirmation number. Google Voice, this used to happen with Google Voice more often, but it's less now. The problem is, hang on, let me type this in. 672 641. The problem is Google tries hard to make it not like a virtual phone number, but in some ways it's kind of a virtual phone number. And if you were trying to accumulate $1 million of cloud credit that you could go sell on eBay for $1,000, what you would do is make 10,000 virtual phone numbers or something like that, and come here and claim $5 credits across thousands of phone numbers, and then go sell the results or something like that. So Claude's fraud detection said, huh, this phone number of Pete's looks like a virtual phone number. I'm not gonna. And interestingly enough, I thought it was kind of a bug in the user experience to say, it didn't work or something like that. It was a very generic generic thing. They don't want to give me the satisfaction of knowing it's because of a virtual number. Because if I were doing 1,000 at a time, they don't want to tell me, hey, you're doing your job poorly. You're not ripping us off well. So they were like, yeah, something's wrong, So anyway, so theoretically I have credit. Super tempting just to use Claude, but no way I'm going to use the API. So now I predict that this is going to work. Let's see. Oh my gosh, it worked. This is a little bit hard to read because it's curl. But you can see that the prompt I sent it, these backslash n's mean new line, or just an empty line. So empty line, human says, hello, Claude, empty line, assistant colon, what should Claude type after that? I'll bet Claude's going to think I should be the assistant, and I'll type something back. So it was a very, very friendly back. Hello. There you go. There's some other cool things here, which we can talk about some other time. You'll notice an interesting thing here. This is the response, and among other things that may or may not be useful, it's got what type of response this is. So when I'm writing API code, a lot of times you'll have kind of a generic part that does the talking back and forth, and a higher level thing that actually uses the lower level thing to talk back and forth and actually issues the command to the lower level thing. So it's helpful for my lower level thing to go, huh, I got an answer back from Claude, because I might be sending it a bunch of different stuff. This is a completion kind of thing. Completion is the technical term kind of for chatting. It means that I'm completing a thing. We can get a little bit deeper into that maybe in the next 20 minutes, maybe not. But you can see that we're kind of working already, so this is great.
Hey, Peter.
Uh, let's look at, so the next thing to do is to bootstrap out of our proof of concept with curl, because curl is well, actually, no, let's do one more. Let's actually even do something fancy and
Hey,
I
Peter,
wonder if
can
I
I
have
ask
this.
a quick question?
Yes, please,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I apologize. So I came just a little bit late. How did you get the API key again?
There's two ways I can answer that. How do you get an API key in general? And why do I have a private beta API key? I wonder which one you're wondering.
Well, I think I know how to get it in general. There's a few ways.
So kind of what I did is I know that the Claude is an API. So into Google, I typed Claude API. And then I found their getting started page. And then it's like, okay, all I have to do is get access to Claude. So here, right now, still, you'll read, you have to apply for beta access to it. I did this a long time ago, and so you fill out the form for the waiting list, and then you get an email. So, to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's kind of what brings us here today at this particular time with 12 hours of notice or something like that. It's like, wow, we get to play with a new thing that not everybody gets to play with. So
Peter,
I'm writing a little program here called, my shell is not very good. So if I were good at shell, I would make it so that this prompt was a variable. I'm not that good with shell, but at least, yeah, actually this is kind of a dead end. Uh, I can show you that, yeah. Let's not do it that way.
Peter, in really simple terms,
Mhm,
can you just explain, like I would ask GPT, like I'm a 5-year-old,
mhm.
why would anybody want an API key? Like, why do I want to be able to do something with an API key?
Okay, let's do two answers, right? Why would Corey want an API key? Or why would Pete want an API key? So Corey wants an API key uh, because some tool that you're already using has said, if you give me an OpenAI API key, I can unlock um, uh, GPT features for you, basically. So that might be your text editor. That might be a design program. It might be your grammar checker. Your grammar checker might say, we've got basic grammar checking capabilities. If you want to use GPT-4, get an API key and use it. Um, another thing, another thing you can do is have a different, a thing I actually recommend for folks. ChatGPT through the web interface, you need to get ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 a month, which is either a lot or maybe not a lot. I tell people, you really want to use GPT-4 and you really want to figure out how to use it. And if $20 a month is too much for you, check it out. Instead of $20 a month, you can use GPT-4, like full strength GPT-4 for 1 penny for 1,000 tokens. And a token is about 3/4 of a word. So if I have a chat back and forth with tokens count both ways. So if I have a chat with ChatGPT, I can have that by paying $20 a month, or I can buy it wholesale and have a few thousand words of chat with GPT-4, full strength GPT-4, for 1,000, let's call it 5,000. That cost me a nickel. A nickel versus 20 bucks. That's interesting. So, so it is on a Mac. On a Mac, I've got an app called Mac GPT. I don't know, maybe we beat that to death enough. Um, uh, Another reason to use an API key is because you don't want to spend 20 bucks a month. You can get a third-party interface that either kind of looks like this or looks completely different. And then you can buy wholesale GPT-4 access rather than retail. And it costs, a penny per 1,000 tokens. I'm watching Corey's face, which is like, huh, that's interesting. That's a really good reason. I'm going to keep pushing that in AI 101. Hey, if you don't want to spend 20 bucks a month, but you still want to do GPT-4, which I highly recommend, buy it wholesale. And it's easy to set up. Let me show you Mac GPT, even though I was going to not spend too much time on this. Mac GPT itself costs money, but there's other free ways to do it. So this is, it's got a different interface, and it's actually also got like, when you install Mac GPT, which costs, I don't know, 30 bucks or something like that. It's a lot, I think. Maybe not, maybe it costs 20. The guy who wrote Mac GPT also wrote Whisper, which is, it's worth giving this guy money just because he wrote a great Whisper client. Whisper is a text-to-speech, speech-to-text transcript doer. But anyway, this is GPT-4, but through a different interface. And to use it, somewhere in the settings here, I had to give it an API key, which is not actually quite true. And there I've given away my API key. In a good program, he would have that masked. So if I was demoing it to somebody, they wouldn't grab my API key. This one actually is very interesting. It has a dual mode. You can either use ChatGPT in a built-in web browser inside MacGPT. So this is just a web browser inside MacGPT, and you can see it looks very similar. Or you can use what he calls native, which is the API. And you don't have to use, if you don't have ChatGPT Plus, you don't have to use the web one. Or if you only want 3.5, you can use the web one. So anyway, where I was going next, we want to bootstrap off of curl into a better API thing. So let's look at Sylph. Sylph is a program that ChatGPT and I wrote together to talk to OpenAI. And the guts of it are pretty simple. And I'm wondering if it kind of just switched over to talk to Anthropic. And you'll notice that this is very similar to the command that I need to give to Claude. So there's a good chance if I just sand off the OpenAI things and make this Anthropic things, this would work. So let's keep that in mind. I'm looking at the clock. We've got 11 more minutes. A different way to do it would be to go over to, I have to say the Anthropic docs are a little bit hard to use. My feedback for the team there. Not that I'm sure they're great docs, but it's a little bit hard for me to get into them to the right place. And there's too many docs in the same place. They've got the API things and the, just chat with me things all together. So let's do, since ChatGPT knows many things, let's ask it to write, let's see if it knows the API docs and can write me a script, because that'll be even faster kind of. So I happen to know that there's a few things that we might need. Pete, this cool guy Pete, wrote up a thing called, if we go to the homepage, click on Python, click on Quick Start. There's a few like magic things to ask for when you're writing a Python script that get you a better script, kind of. Not better, just more full featured. So I can start with this prompt. In a better world, this would be a GPT rather than copy and pasting a prompt, but whatever. So this is what I want it to do, write a Python script and talk to the Claude API. This is all Python gobbledygook that is going to be, I checked it, it looks good. That's what I want. So now we come to the minute of reckoning where we see if it knows the API or if it's just going to guess it. So it just did a generic thing. When I asked it to do this for OpenAI, it actually knew enough of the docs. We could still use this. It's not a lot better than the one for self, but we forgot that unfortunate network error. Let's try to regenerate that. Let's do the same trick with Gemini, just for the heck of it.
And
I started,
currently, using Gemini, you have to pay for it, right?
Gemini Advanced, yeah, which I am doing, partly because I'm a Google One subscriber because I use lots of Google Drive space. I have never done this with Gemini, so I know ChatGPT is very reliable at generating Python scripts for me. So that's why we started there. We'll see. Because it's Python, this actually looks very similar to add argument. So client.completion, that's a good, yeah, okay. This will actually work, I think, and because we're short on time, maybe we'll try it. This is actually kind of good news. There's a Python library called Anthropic, which I hit earlier, if you'll remember when I did that search right here. This is kind of good news. This is probably built, well, I don't know. I was hoping to talk directly to the REST API. Anthropic probably, maybe this is a third party, but Anthropic probably built something where I can be a little bit higher level than talking straight to the REST API. So, because we're constrained on time, let's just take the easier path. That's fine. So this is me making a new place for a different Python program on my computer. And then this is a magic Mac command, which puts that, I'm going to call this program Anthropic, actually. And then let's, so these are standard libraries. We don't have to find them. This one we do have to find. So let's ask if, or let's see. So these are great instructions from Gemini. Here's all the things you have to set up. Here's why Pete asked for a shebang line. So it's explaining back to me why I had those instructions, which is really cool. So here's the install for the Anthropic library. This is sometimes a little bit different, spelled a little bit different, which is why I'm checking for the docs here. So then if you're a Python geek, even if you're not a Python geek, you should learn about virtual environments. I'm going to create a virtual environment. If you're not a Python geek, just ignore this. This is Python gobbledygook. Although, actually, well, we may come to back to this. Um, if you're a hyper geek, we can talk about whether or not this should be called Venv or not. Okay, so now I've confirmed that this says Venv, which is important for maintaining my whole computer health. Not like it won't screw things up a lot, but so this is installing a library, it's called, which abstracts out the lower level discussion with the API into a higher level Python friendly way. So if I'm a Python programmer, I'm happy because somebody else has done all of the REST API gobbledygook. So Anthropic has a bunch of the Anthropic library has a bunch of other libraries that it needs to do its work, and pip Python, knows how to install all the other ones. And yay, now I have all kinds of cool libraries on my computer. And yay, they're in a virtual environment, which is not messing up the rest of my computer. Okay, so now let me,
What about that bottom where it says install the upgrade because there's a new release? Would you do that or do you leave it alone?
it's a really good question. And kind of surprised here. Let me do, hang on just a sec, Corey, while I do this. I thought I would see, I thought I would expose my API key here. Oh, here it is here. So this is my API key. Now I have to go delete this one. I knew that this was going to happen. It turns out it's actually pip that wants to be updated. And I know that this is not too great of a thing. I've got a friend actually, and I would have followed his advice is like, Pete, every time you set up a new virtual environment, make sure you upgrade pip. So he would have had me do this right away as soon as I did that other setup part. And I just don't have my fingers. My fingers don't remember that, so I don't do it usually. And then it's not super important. Anyway, part of some of this is knowing what to ignore and what not to ignore. So now we've got an API key, we've got our script. We're going to make it executable. We call it Anthropic. And now we're going to try running it and see what happens. I think it's going to say, this is actually a bug in Gemini's. So this is probably something that I could fix by myself, but Gemini did this. So I'm going to say, again, this is the first time I'm using ChatGPT, or sorry, Gemini for this. I usually use ChatGPT. And the way you can, so you can kind of do stuff a little bit above your pay grade or a little bit above your knowledge level. And it's in bounds to copy an error message back and say, hey, fix this for me, instead of trying to figure it out yourself. I have a soft stop. I'm going to go a little bit over. I'm going to try this. If I thought about this a little bit more, I could probably actually decide whether or not this is going to work or not. I do includes a little bit differently in Python. So,
Yeah, I love Emacs as opposed to Pico or Nano personally.
yeah. I think, okay, so I think it's as simple as I would have to do this everywhere we call Anthropic, but I think it's as simple as this. And maybe not. Yeah, there you go. That's much better. Wow. I didn't actually read this script, so it's taking input from a file, which is kind of, because of the instructions I gave it, it's kind of a reasonable thing. So instead of fixing the script, let's kind of work with the script the way it wants it to be. So it was looking for a file name, not just the. So there you go. I'm going to stop here. This for me is moderately successful. The things I wish, and let me go back to my notes. If I were a good lab technician, I would write up my conclusions or my progress here. I probably won't do that. We didn't really get to look at the REST API. We got bogged down in a lot of documentation issues, is the way I think of it. Sylph would probably work, maybe with a little bit of substitution. We used curl, and we used write another similar thing for Claude with Gemini. So we followed our script reasonably well. We went off reservation a lot with general knowledge stuff, which I do not feel bad for. But sorry if you're looking for just the juicy Claude nuggets. I can do another one of these now that I've done the first step. I can do another one with just, here's Claude through the REST API. Here's Claude through the Anthropic library. So that would be another good next step. But we got pretty good access. The most important thing is we kind of cracked it open a little bit. And we know that you'll remember that I typed chat completion here. So that the whole completion, the idea of completion as the kind of chat is going to be similar, at least, to OpenAI. So that's kind of a good thing. It's a good thing for Python developers that there's an Anthropic library. It's an unfortunate thing for me playing with REST. I'm a Python programmer too, so there's a good chance I'll use the Anthropic library. But then it's custom for Anthropic. It's not general for, well, anyway. So any last questions, thoughts, questions for the next time? I'll go back. I'll remember that we want to talk about password managers and security models or something,
And Google Voice.
and Google Voice. Wow. Okay.
This is my first meeting with you. Thank you. It was quite enjoyable.
Thanks, Thomas. You're welcome. Should we do another? Did people get enough, or do we want another Claude specific one?
I think it would be nice to have another cloud specific one.
Okay.
That
Where
would be helpful.
I
Yeah.
would go. Sorry, Thomas. Go ahead. You just.
I agree.
Where I would go next time is probably expanding Sylph a little bit so that it could talk to GPT and to Claude, and we could see a little bit why I set up Sylph the way I did.
And maybe like in our chat so that it helps us all out. As a matter of fact, I have some work to do later today, and you may have helped me with my tasks for the day. So I'll drop you a direct message on that. But
Okay.
but the one thing is that for folks to understand about APIs and how they're keys and how they enable the transference from one application to another, maybe we don't have a session, but maybe we find some good YouTube resources or something like that where someone could go out and just take a look at like some really, really basic, API knowledge, unless we want to go ahead and we want to do that. Sometimes those are at too more of a programming level, right?
Yeah,
Folks who
yeah,
already have programming experience, and they're starting to talk about all those details as compared to what the novice needs to understand the essential parts and nuts and bolts. So if that doesn't exist, it makes a great class, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
count me in for writing that one, okay?
Okay.
So I'd love
Um,
to do that.
Thanks, Patsy. That's a good one. And yeah, I like your idea of just looking for YouTube resources. I think one of the things that we could do is figure out how to look for the right API, the right resources on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
It's like, because if you ask about API, you get
No,
too
you
deep
have,
too fast. And
you have to, yeah.
so, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm gonna put, I don't, maybe you care, maybe you don't. I'm gonna put the link. Sylph is actually up on GitHub as an open source thing. You don't need to go to it unless you want to play with Python and REST APIs, more or less. But if you want to start there, probably will start with something like Self, maybe not. But we'll use that to bootstrap into simple REST API access to Claude and OpenAI.
So one last question before you go. Speaking of Python, okay, I made it like halfway through a course and then got busy and like stopped. But is there a beginner Python course that you recommend?
And already know programming, right? It's just Python you don't?
No, it's years ago in a galaxy far, far away. I did some COBOL and SQL. So it's like some of the concepts make sense, but I wouldn't say that I'm like pedaling on the bicycle at 20 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
it would be good to. I understand that there are languages and there are tasks and there's CRUD, right? And
Yep.
there are things you do, right? So being able to go ahead and to put that together now to
I the problem with any any computer programming tutorial I've seen is they're always kind of the wrong level, right? It's either too high level or too low level, and it's too abstract or not. So where I was going with this, I started writing this up. This is kind of still my advice. If you know general programming concepts,
Mhm,
but you don't know the syntax and conventions of Python,
mhm.
just start with ChatGPT, start having it write the scripts.
Right. Yeah,
That's
because
what I would do. I
I'm familiar with the hello world, right? Where a lot of people start, right?
Yeah,
But
and
it's a thing to move
and
beyond.
this, argparse -i -o and shebang and main. This sentence here gets that framework of kind of going from an empty um, the only really important thing in here, this is the guts of
Yep.
this is the guts of it, right?
hmm
And you can read this, I'm sure.
Yep.
The rest of this is all Python gobbledygook, and
Yep.
you can certainly learn this Python gobbledygook, but you don't need to until you need to, right? So it's like
Yeah.
get ChatGPT to write this script for you, and why is this and why is this? You can actually, I would start accomplishing things with it like that, and then you can dig into argparse and why that matters or why it doesn't, and change
Awesome.
the dash i's and dash o's. Uh, you should theoretically be able to ask Python, hey Python, why would we use argparse?
Mhm.
Explain this to me, explain this section to me. I think it'll be really good at that. Let's try it real quick.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
we all want to get
Look,
out of here,
and
but
it seems to be such a friendly language. It's almost like a natural language, but the libraries are so impressive.
Yeah, and my brain is so hungry. So that's
Oh,
the way
good,
I'll describe
good.
it. My brain is so hungry.
um, Julia, what's Arcveris? So
I don't
this
know. I
is
just need
sorry, go ahead. Argparse, it's called. It's short for argument parser.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And you'll see what I did. I got Python to write that whole script with Pete's magic. I do actually kind of recommend this magic thing. And sometimes this will be the wrong thing. Like we got screwed up because it's like use -I to specify the input file. And I was expecting this to be on the command line where it should be, but Pete, in his infinite wisdom, said an input file. So Gemini is like, okay, dude, I'm gonna make an input file, whatever. So this screwed me up, but just saying use argparse. Shebang is useful for Mac. You don't really need it on Windows. Using a main function is good for various reasons, which you end up learning later. But anyway, so this magic sentence turned into this code, which you don't have to understand Python to use. You can just go, okay, whatever. But then you can take this and say, okay, today's the day I'm really going to figure out what that argparse thing is. And you can go look at the documentation for argparse. The argparse documentation is actually quite good. But anymore nowadays, so we have a new way of learning things now is my and not everybody's going to want to learn this way. Some people want to read a book or have a course and tests. Other people go, okay, I just keep asking ChatGPT dumb questions until I get the thing that I want, right? Um, so even here, right, it's like, what's a library? You could ask, what's a library? What's a command line interface? Patsy, I think you'll recognize all of this, and you can just ask it, explain this to me, and all of a sudden you've got custom built documentation, So this is, in chapter 5 or something when you're learning about argparse, you can decide to do that. And so I feel like there was some
Appreciate
other
you.
thing in there. The other thing to do, Patsy, you're on a Mac or
Well,
Windows?
well, I'd like to go back to a Mac. Currently, I'm on Windows.
Um,
So we'll call it Windows for now, but
okay.
someday I hope to go back to a Mac.
A thing that I've got queued up in my head is how to get started with Python on a Mac and on Windows. And
And
it's
downloading like what, Anaconda and doing that type of stuff.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and Anaconda. I think the one
that
that we
kind of
end up
old school.
liking. Mm, the other thing you can do is actually start with a Jupyter notebook. The
Sure,
kids today would start with Jupyter.
sure.
I'm old school and I use command line. Uh, let me
I,
see
I
if
I work with labs that use Jupyter Notebook and such. So I understand of whence you speak.
yeah. Um, I Jupyter is an awesome Jupyter is a way to start using Python without worrying about it's like if you're just using Python in a utility way kind of or something like that, it's maybe not
Hmm.
the best way to write scripts. Maybe not. I don't know. It would be pretty good at that too. I think there's a couple different ways to do it. I think Python for Windows was the one that we end up recommending. A different way to do it, this is probably what I would do, Python for Windows. A different way to do it, and for some people this is a better way and some people it's worse. Windows subsystem for Linux.
Hmm.
Uh, if you know Unix command line at all, I'd probably start here instead.
Okay.
And the trick here is that you end up with, I think it's actually a virtual computer. You
Yes.
end up with two
Understood.
different file systems. You end up with the Linux file system and the Windows file system. And if you want to use them, you can get between them, but you have to manage that overhead. So, but this is maybe a better place to start
Cool.
if you know Unix.
It again, so the nature of my work is that I get to learn a little about a lot. So I know these snippets, but I need to take the time for myself, even in my job, to be proficient, because that's the way I'm gonna, so to speak, future-proof myself, is to be as
Hmm.
technical as I am communicative, right? So I've got to be able to do both. Appreciate you. I don't want to take up others'
So,
time,
so
but
right into that space, I
yeah,
think the new way to do that is to work in the space that you kind of know stuff about, but kind of don't. Just use
yeah,
ChatGPT to keep you going.
Yeah,
And then the thing that I did with argparse, once in a while you go, okay, instead of getting something done, like just writing the script, I really want to know what that argparse magic is, and if I need to, and then you go back to ChatGPT again and ask about a specific thing that you guys worked on together.
right.
Okay, now I really need to learn it, ChatGPT. Let's learn it today. Great, thanks. Great questions all. Look forward to more with Claude and more AI 101.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
I'll get this up today, by the way.
Thank
Either way.
you. I'll use it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Pete. I always get snippets and, I'll build the snippets over the next 10 years.
It's awesome. Take
Thank
care,
you.
all.